Hello, my name is Eric Christen and I'm going to speak a little bit about the IELTS test. The IELTS test is an international English language program which helps students to get into universities so that they can do MAs, BAs and PhDs, whatever. The way in which it's scored is using a band system from 1 to 9. A lot of students have problems with the IELTS test because it is difficult and there is a very short period of time in which to answer the questions and do the tasks. The IELTS test is divided into 4 sections: reading, writing, speaking and listening. The 2 most difficult sections for many people are reading and writing. The reading is about an hour and you basically have to answer 40 questions over 3 passages, no, about 3 passages, okay? So you have to read 3 passages and answer 40 questions, about 13 to 14 questions per passage. These passages are quite difficult. Sometimes they're academic texts, sometimes they're general newspaper reports, sometimes they're a discussion on various topics, including an argumentative discussion. There are a number of tips in dealing with these tests. Of course, the best one is that you really need to prepare for at least 1 or 2 months, before you consider taking the IELTS test. The writing is also about 1 hour and is in 2 parts, task 1 and task 2. Task 1 is basically a report on a graph or a diagram of some kind, and it's only 20 minutes. Here you have to analyze a diagram, report its features, make contrasts and comparisons, and use specific language when you're doing this. Task 2 is usually an argumentative essay, an essay for and against something. Is nuclear power a good thing, for example? And in this one you have to write 250 words. For task 1 it's 150. Now you get an hour to do this, so it's quite a lot of work for a short period of time, and you really need to make a plan when you're doing task 2. You need to make a list of ideas, you need to think about what you're going to write, and you need to follow the structures that you've prepared, or you've hopefully prepared for when writing. The typical structure is introduction, 2 paragraphs and a conclusion for task 2. Okay. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the speaking. The speaking test is 14 or 15 minutes and is also in sections. In fact, it has 3 parts. In the first part, the examiner will ask you to speak in general about yourself, your hobbies, your family, and so on and so forth. In the second part, the examiner will ask you to look at a card and discuss a topic. So you have to actually talk about a specific subject. Now, if you don't know anything about this topic, you can ask for another card and you can ask the examiner questions. But remember, this is not really a dialogue, it's a formal exercise. It's really a test where the examiner is listening to you speak. Okay. The third part of the speaking, you have to enlarge upon part 2. You have to speak a little bit more about the same sort of topic in a more general or academic way. Let's say the topic for part 2 was talking about education or your personal educational experiences. Part 3 would then be something like talking about education in general. What do you think the future of education is going to be in your country? Okay, let's talk about the listening. The listening is about 30 to 40 minutes, and you have again about 40 questions and different task types to deal with. You've got task types where you have to complete a paragraph or a summary or complete a sentence. You've got task types where you have to match some information in the task with what you hear, and so on and so forth. Now, the listening is in 4 sections. The first part is generally quite easy and it's a dialogue between 2 people. The second part is a little bit more difficult, and it gets progressively more difficult until you get to the fourth part. The fourth part is generally a university lecture or some kind of seminar address. Okay? Right, the questions, the listening questions, as I said, get more difficult, and there's different types of listening questions. Now, there are all kinds of tips in dealing with the listening test. Some of them are making sure that you highlight and understand the questions and the question tasks. In the listening, you will get a few seconds, up to 30 seconds, to examine the questions, think about the possible answers and things like that. And the two main tips are highlight the key words and phrases in the questions, and the second one is try to predict what kind of answers you're going to be listening for. Are you going to be listening for numbers, phrases, names, etc., that sort of thing?